Hello, thank you so much for choosing to listen to this episode. This is Facilitating on Purpose, and I am your host, Beth Cougler Blom. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, and maybe you've been, my dream is that you would listen to every episode, perhaps you've heard me talk about a couple of times that I wanted to chat with younger facilitators because I don't know about you, but as you get older, you tend to almost always associate just around with people your age. And I was saying, I think it was Deborah Rimoizo and I, and maybe another person, we were talking about, well, what do younger facilitators think right now? What do they need? What do they want? What do they have to share with us who are older in the field? So lo and behold, I was in an event where I met someone that helped make this happen, this conversation that I'm about to present to you today. I was in an event, I just happened to meet Bryan Guzmán, who is the community lead for the Future Now community from the IAF, the International Association of Facilitators. Bryan and I had a separate meeting and we cooked up this episode for you. Bryan put it out to the Future Now community that we would like to invite people to come on to the podcast, to have a conversation with each other, to answer the question, what does facilitation feel like right now? The interesting thing is that I'm not in this episode and neither is Bryan, because although we were in the conversational space in the Zoom meeting that we all had, we turned off our mics, Bryan and I, and we invited the participants who you're going to hear in the episode to start the session, to end the session, and bring forth all of their wonderfulness that they have done in this episode for you. I'll say a little bit more in the outro about how impressed I was with this group and maybe just pick up on a couple of points that they made that also resonated with me, but actually the whole episode resonated with me. These folks are so skilled and they come from all parts of the world. They are really from all over. They're from Florida, they're from Hungary, Russia, Romania, Germany, Kenya, Tanzania, Italy, and India. So in that order, please welcome Starling, Lily, Alessia, Andrea, Felix, Timothy, Anna Grace, Elena, and Mushumi. If you want to follow up with any of them after the episode, I have their full names and how to contact them in the show notes. I'm so grateful that they spent the time sharing their expertise with us in this way, and I hope you enjoy the show.
Starling Blom, human-centered design practitioner and facilitator. I know the question that we're kind of thinking about today is, what does facilitation feel like right now? For myself, as someone who has been facilitating, I want to say around the 3-year mark, I initially came in and was facilitating and didn't know I was doing it till someone at my job had said, "Hey, you're like facilitating. You should take a couple of trainings and get a little bit better." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, let me try it." And I discovered my favorite part of facilitation and now what it feels like for me is that ability to bring a bunch of people together when things are confusing, when things are tense, and they'll walk out high-fiving each other. One of the best compliments I ever got was when I was working with a government agency, and at the end of the 2-day offsite that I had led, she was like, "Oh my gosh, we've been trying to figure this out for 3, 4 months, and you helped us solve it in 2 days." And I was like, "Whoa." Who else would like to chime in about what does facilitation feel like right now?
Thanks, darling. My name is Lily. I'm a facilitator, but also an oral traditional storyteller and a community manager. Oh my gosh, so many words came up when I read this question. Necessary was one of them. Exciting, edgy, depending on like who you're facilitating with. I started a community initiative recently where I gathered a bunch of folks around traditional stories. So it was a night called Stories as Doorways. I invited in people here in Budapest where I live, and it was hosted in English. It was very international. And after each traditional story, I brought questions, naturally, as a facilitator does. And some of them went a bit deep. And I'd say 95% of the people were like, yes, I'm here for it. I want to have these kind of conversations. And there was definitely some feedback where one person was like, those were big questions. And I don't know, it felt really important that there was space that some people felt comfortable to come in, even if it was like ooh, it is this edge for me. And I was also very clear in the holding of it that you didn't have to go there if you didn't want to. It just felt really important for me to have spaces where we can come together and touch things that maybe we wouldn't normally be able to in everyday life, and have these conversations where it's like, okay, I'm going to ask you, like, what is a wound that you need to have kissed in your life right now because it needs to be healed? And then someone was just like, whoa, why are you asking me about my wounds? And that's definitely a part of my facilitation practice, that I am working in these sort of depth spaces. And then one other quick thing that came out of that was heavy. Facilitation can feel heavy sometimes at the moment. I also do a lot of intercultural dialogue work, and was born and raised in the USA, and I was visiting recently, and I felt really overwhelmed in life, and I had to show up to a group that I was facilitating. And Beth, when you mentioned earlier, like, you cried recently on a podcast episode, I cried as I was doing my check-in in the group, and this felt really edgy for me because I was like, I'm supposed to be here and bring the vibes. I mean, obviously, it's not just what I need to do as a facilitator. Partially, I need to be authentic, but it was really, really hard. And I almost didn't want to show up for the session at all. But I'm really glad I did. And I think it allowed us, it was a group I knew quite well, so they could hold me in it. And I felt very grateful. But yeah, it feels like a lot of things. So I brought a lot of words for how facilitation feels right now for me. And I'd love to hear what someone else has to say too.
Lily, your point about authenticity is very close to me. You see, I am 32 and I am in facilitation for over 8 years. And right now, I feel quite comfortable in facilitation because I have my expertise. I am sure of my skills, more or less. People know that I am a good facilitator. But when I started as a facilitator, I was like 24, 25, and I needed to establish my authority. I needed people in costumes with ties trust me and be ready to listen to me and do as I tell them. This place for me was about creating a mask of a professional. I'm afraid that I was not very authentic to myself because I can be energetic, I can be too emotional, I can be all over the place. But it's not a type of facilitator that a lot of people expected from me. So I needed kind of hide my true identity and be very serious, not very emotional. And sometimes it meant that I would choose methods that are not very fun, methods that are more serious. And you need to put on your serious face in order to provide these discussions. And I'm happy that right now I feel way more comfortable in my skin and I can be more playful. I can be sometimes maybe a little bit wild and definitely bold in my facilitation. But when I just started, I'm afraid I was not authentic. And for people who are just starting their journey, I do not recommend my journey. Please stay authentic, because the mask that I created for myself, maybe it worked, but I don't really enjoyed my time as facilitator when I was pretending to be way more serious than I truly was. So authenticity is important because it's not about the results, but it's also about us feeling comfortable in our skin.
I'll contribute there, Olesia. You know, when I started being a facilitator for 15 years now, over 15 years, my name is Anna Grace Wombisa, speaking from Tanzania. The first time I was called to facilitate about human rights and facilitating people from university, it was crazy because when I was, facilitating, telling them, I have my PowerPoint and everything, and I felt like people, they were listening, but also they knew what we were talking about, and there was nothing. Then when I was getting out of that room, I met my colleague, very busy drawing, very simple picture, but drawing a head with big ears, big eyes. And then I was like, what are you doing? He said, I'm preparing facilitation for tomorrow. Then I was like, the next morning, after the session, we got the evaluation. They said the best facilitation session was his session. And then I started to learn preparation. How are you preparing to get into that? I started working on that. How do you make a session, a facilitation and learning to be enjoyable, and different from the lecture? Then I started learning. But recently, as the facilitation is growing, it's changing. It's no longer about the people in the room. It's more about opening the space for us, also for a facilitator to learn, to be transformed by what is going to happen in that room, being ready. Actually, I learned about holding the stick, handling the stick, giving out the stick to the participants, to the community that you have. But sometimes it might test you and bring out something that you never expected in you. Last year I was in Malawi. I was facilitating for 5 days. And then we are supposed to prepare to bring the feedback back to the community. I do community engagement. The participants were ready, and then I felt like they were tired, and I tried to explain a lot. I explained what I wanted them to do, and then they were not doing anything. And especially young women, they just decided to stay aside. They were not saying anything. And then it was like confusing. I felt like, oh my God, I'm losing it. Then one of the participants suggested, how about we go back home and then we come back tomorrow? And then I was like, we are out of time. But yet I had to listen. Means I have to fix myself to agree to what the change in the community wants sometimes. So we went back home, and then the next morning when I came back, I found the participants have organized. We call them animators. They have already organized. They have prepared. They had theater for presentation. They had poems and everything. I shed tears. Because what I knew all along, handling the stick for 10 years, for 15 years, today it is coming to me in another way. And then I said, sometimes it brings out something that we never knew. And I remember someone from Ghana said, the importance of checking into yourself the baggages that we are carrying, fear, tension, and then we bring it to the community. And then so for me, it reminded me sometimes, if you're not whole, how can you facilitate a session which is complete and whole? That's what I learned from that. And I never stopped learning. And especially learning about myself before getting into the room and before getting into the community.
I thought I'll just add, after hearing all of you, it's very insightful about the journey that you all have lived. So mine was a little different. Unknowingly, sometimes, I got a lot of feedback from my friends, my colleagues in the organization saying that, Maushmi, you know what, you help others, to come up with outcomes. And maybe when you talk, there's a kind of a clarity, and, you're allowing people, giving that space to everyone to voice out their concerns, and you also like to problem solve, but you don't give answers. You ask the other person to come up with the answers, and I was also neutral at most of the cases. So they say that, you know what, Maushmi, you can be a very good facilitator. So that's how my journey started as a facilitator, when people have started saying that, these are qualities of a facilitator. And when I actually started doing that, more like a facilitation, that's when things turned topsy-turvy, because I became very conscious about, oh, now I am doing facilitation. Earlier, when I was not doing, unknowingly, there was no fear, no nudges. Nobody is going to, talk about it. But the moment I actually started doing it, there were a lot of fear, there were a lot of aversion, which started, cropping in. Because now, knowingly, like, oh, I have to do this, I have to get this. So there were a lot of, I would say, not a good initial that happened when I actually started doing this facilitation. It was at one point of time, I thought, okay, let not any question come from the participant side. Let me give as many information so that, there will be a lot of clarity. But then maybe certain feedbacks that I got, it was more like a monologue rather than a dialogue. So, when I started doing it purposefully, then there were a lot of feedback, which was not on a very conducive side. I would say it was not very palatable. I think that's where it was the nudge. Like when I was not knowing it, I was doing well. But the moment when I was actually doing it from a facilitation point of view, I realized that I was doing a lot of, maybe I became very conscious and ended up doing things which I shouldn't be doing it. So I think that's how my journey started. And I think then later on, when I got a lot of feedbacks, I stopped preparing myself. Then I said that, no, it's not about you preparing. The answer should come from the other side. So you can go without any preparation, just be present over there. If somebody says this, ask it back to him. Why do you say so? Where are you coming from? These are a couple of questions which can really invite a lot of, I would say, perspective from the other person rather than me preparing it. So I think that's where, things have changed, and I feel a little more confident now looking at how the journey, went ahead for me. So yeah, my name is Moshmi and I'm from India, by the way. Bangalore, India. Yes.
I resonated a lot with your story. My name is Andrea. I'm from Romania and I facilitate. In my day-to-day work, I'm a psychologist. So I try to blend these two worlds. What I feel regarding the space and what you were saying, not to give answers, but to create a space. At least here in Romania, I'm seeing today that people are not used to being given space at all. It's very new to them and it's very foreign to them to have a space that's theirs and to have a space and to have someone or more people who are just curious about them and their story and their perspectives. I often notice a lot of relief at the end of facilitating sessions, a lot of clarity that people walk away with. And I also resonated with what Lily was saying about it being a little bit heavy. What I notice in our culture is that we still preserve this idea that we can do everything on our own and we don't need any external help, support, facilitation. So we go and we ask for this type of help when things are already a little bit maybe too far, or maybe we are already at the edge of a conflict. And when you step into those scenes, it can feel a little bit heavy also because at that point people already are expecting an answer. They're expecting solutions fast if possible. And so coming in as a facilitator and creating a space and bringing an energy that allows people to understand that this is not about bringing you the fast answers that you need, but more about facilitating a relationship maybe, or just a context where you can get back and you can find those answers. That can feel a little bit heavy sometimes. And also I can also connect a lot to what Anna Grace was saying about connecting to ourselves and having the routines before we walk into a session and after we walk out of that session. It's very important. I find that regulation happens in groups a lot when people are together, and the type of emotional groundedness that we can create for them will also play a huge impact on how the session goes. And this is sometimes something we don't even see because maybe it's not so obvious or it's not verbalized necessarily. So yeah, a mix of release, clarity, depth, but also sometimes heaviness.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Hearing you all talk makes me feel very curious. I can see myself in all your stories. I feel it quite a relief to hear all of you going through similar experiences, and I also feel very excited from hearing your stories because I see facilitation now from multiple perspectives from very different backgrounds, from very different countries. And it just shows me how encompassing the discipline is. It's not a discipline in itself. It's bringing different disciplines together and different people from different contexts. And I find that very insightful being here with all of you. I have goosebumps all over my body to just listening to your stories. Yeah, I think that is something that makes facilitation very real for us humans, is that we come together and we suddenly feel connected across the globe here on an online podcast, just sharing our voices with each other. I've seen this in various contexts, from very professional settings to very private settings. And I feel that facilitation allows us to be human and step out of this rather professional role or the mask that so many of you have mentioned. I have also been living a life with a professional mask for way too long, and I see how we as facilitators have a responsibility to take off the mask first, because we are the ones who set the tone, who create the norms, who hold the space for the other people to take down their masks and be themselves, even though it might be in a professional context. But I think the reason why we facilitators are invited into the space is to do exactly that, is to open a space where people can take off the masks and be themselves. And that creates all the innovation, creativity, connection, performance, everything that the group hopes for. Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to listen to you, and great that you all connect us here. Thank you.
For me, facilitation changed the meaning of alignment. So I'm Elena, I'm a fundraiser, and I work also in program delivery in the nonprofit sector. So I come from a little bit the contrary of what Olesia was saying at first. I come from a very structured and formal environment where my main work was to align where my organization or my groups want to go with funders' request. And for me, that was all alignment was about, because my KPIs were connected not so much to what the room wanted to do, but how much money I was able to mobilize based on the decision taken in the room. And so for many years, I think that was, let's say, my North Star when I was in any group setting. I need to get them to align to donors' requests. I need to get them to align to partners' requests. I remember very well the first time I joined a well thought and facilitated program. It was a team retreat. And also there was about brainstorming. And this facilitator, Ewan, he walked us through a series of liberating structures to decide what was our team charter, where as a unit we wanted to go and how and what was making us excited about being in a room and in a team together. And that completely shifted how I work in group dynamics and how I kind of deliver my workshop from then onwards. I mean, for me right now, first of all, alignment is about how people connect to each other and how to get the best ideas of the people together to create and available resources. So now I focus much more on bringing people together rather than on doing a checkbox list of what, let's say, donor would request or partner would request, because that is always very important in my line of work. But alignment within the group comes first, and especially safety, because when you work in fundraising and in certain setting, I work a lot in post-conflict or conflict-affected realities. When you're just looking at things from a fundraising perspective, it can be very, of course, transactional exclusively. And for me, really, facilitation shifted everything. And now, to a certain extent, and now I cannot even be present at a sort of group dinner without thinking of facilitation dynamics. How can I make people more comfortable when they want to reach out a bottle of water? How can I make people more comfortable when they want to communicate with me or with each other? So it has changed everything. And I'm trying to bring a little bit more playful aspects to that compared to like the rigidity and the structure that I've been trained on for many years.
My name is Timothy, based here in Nairobi, Kenya. I'm a knowledge sharing person. And of course, I do a lot. I play at an intersection of knowledge and communication, and of course, bringing people together. What facilitation really means right now, and just hearing from the different voices that I've just shared, I feel currently the world sits at a very interesting nexus right now. There's so much chaos and so much noise, right? So, and a perfect example is when we look at spaces where we have communities and dissenting voices talking to each other, right? Spaces where people come together and share their views. More or less, it's unstructured and so much chaos is happening there. And all that can also be translated even in our daily work, in our daily lives. And amidst all that chaos, we can't, say that there's no, decisions and great ideas and innovations right there, right? Amidst all that chaos. And I feel like, and I know that facilitation feels like, that kryptonite that quiets the noise, right? That kryptonite that is able to demystify that noise and bring together, those dissenting voices. And just thinking about my own journey, I'd be, looking at when you found yourself in a room where people were trying to come up with, these decisions and having these conversations. And something, inside of you just found, the need to actually bring them together, right? And you didn't know that's how, that's what facilitation is all about, or moderation, whatever it is that you want to call it. That being my journey, and just transitioning into spaces where you want to bring people together to come up with innovation and all these solutions. I think for me, facilitation feels in the current setting, in the current world, it feels like a very needed skill. At times it's scary. For instance, in my current domain, being able to steer conversations, in spaces where you have people who have an authority over certain topics, and you want to actually, in a sense, lord over those conversations, right? And tell them to, and help them guide those conversations. At times it's very scary. But at times it's very humbling seeing the outcome of those conversations, right? When they come back to you at the end of a 3-day or 4-day retreat and tell you that this was one of the best facilitated workshops they've been to. Simply because we, I think one of the interesting bits for me was the fact that we actually handled time and the agenda perfectly was such a game changer. For me, facilitation is something that we need in a space right now that is very chaotic. And then finally, we are in the digital age, artificial intelligence, left, right, and center. So much is happening. Facilitation keeps standing out because it needs to keep quiet, and there's different voices and and all this change that keeps on happening. In our local setting, we keep on looking at or visiting different communities. And as a facilitator, it's very important for me to be authentic, as as it was said earlier, and try and fit within those different contexts and not just copy and paste and wear those masks. It's important for me to understand those different settings and fit in those different settings. And I think for me, facilitation in that sense comes off as a very interesting experience, where it allows you to experience all these environments and adapt to all these environments and be an agent of change and innovation.
Lily again, and yeah, just feeling really heartened by listening to you all. It's such like a balm, right, for the soul to be able to gather and speak like this. Because I was thinking about, as everyone was speaking, it sparked this idea, like, as facilitators, is it easy for us to be facilitated? Because there's like comments in the chat where we're like, "Ooh, I bring this like to everything I do and everywhere I go, and I'm bringing these skills. And something around containment came up. Like we create these containers that allow people to connect with each other, connect with their deeper selves. And I have found sometimes that I can struggle to then find those spaces where I can be held. Like, for sure, I have a beautiful community and I'm in therapy, but sometimes it's an edge where I'm like, wait, can I just show up and allow myself to receive what it is that I love doing and offering to others? And so that sparked for me, and also this word emergence, because we're emerging voices here in this space, and that as a facilitator, we're working with this feeling of emergence, what is actually alive in the space, and how do we balance both ourselves being attuned to it and then also letting the wisdom of the group come forward. And I think when Anna Grace was speaking, this really came from me. It's like, actually, yeah, we don't have to know all the answers. Like we're allowing folks to bring their wisdom, their ideas, their energy, and that's creating something that none of us can predict before we enter that space altogether. And then one final thing that sparked was facilitation feels like both a personal and a spiritual journey. And not to get too deep with it, like it challenges things in myself, my own confidence sometimes, my own learning and understanding, my own like conflict, for example, in space when things come up and we're like, something gets heated or there's differences of opinion, like that challenges me because of my own upbringing in life. But then this spiritual journey of like when we surrender to something that's even bigger than me and my personal and this group here, and like because I have these beliefs in myself of something more numinous, that it feels like a really powerful journey of being able to gather with humans, and even when it's heavy, a fundamental belief that I have that humans are good, and when we all gather, really good things can happen. So that was just sparks from hearing all of you speak, which felt really nice for me. So thank you.
Can I add on that with an example? Because being vulnerable, being intentional, being vulnerable, that I'll be ready. When we started learning about, big ears, a figure with big ears and big eyes, then my colleague told me once, "You understand what it means?" And then I said, "No, actually I don't. I just say it means you have to listen more. You have to be observant. And you have to have a small mouth to just, ask the right question at the right time, and have lots of methodology to make people feel safe, feel free to be able to have a conversation with each other." Why? Because by doing that means you believe in yourself, but also you believe in the community, that they have they're knowledgeable, they're wise enough to be able to reason and have a conversation with each other to solve their own issues. So what your role there is just to ask the right question at the right time with right methodologies to be able to have. So as the days goes on, you understand that even asking the right question, believing that it needs also for you to be able to believe in yourself, to be authentic, as it has been said, that be ready to be vulnerable. Just like the situation in Malawi, for me, the way it happened, it made me feel like, okay, so this is happening. I am vulnerable, I become vulnerable, but also I'm a human being. The situation that you can't contain. So you just let people do the things, believe in the process. That's when you make people learn better, but also do things and participate well.
Thank you so much. And Grace, just to jump right on it, I think also a moment of enlightenment came to me when I understand that there were ways, methods, and it was possible to kind of engineer trust and safety within a team dynamics. And then it didn't have to be up to kind of how nice I was or how nice people were behaving in the room that would get them to results. There are techniques, and people put them in books, in podcasts, online, that can help us creating that space. It's not going to come out of nowhere. As a host and facilitator, not to the extent of how nice can we encourage, but there's a way to engineer for that. And for me, facilitation is always like such an experimental practice, and it fosters so much my creativity. Every day I learn like something new about how to kind of do my best to recreate those processes. So,
and maybe we should also look at how do we feel after facilitate, after a session.
I feel absolutely drained. Sometimes after an event that lasts 1 to whole days, I am not able to communicate for a week because for me, facilitation is about taking care of everyone in the room and everyone outside the room. So I need to be sure that every person, maybe it is someone who makes slides moving on the screen, or maybe it is a person who organizes chair or organizes food, or participants who just came here to listen. I need to everyone feel that they are appreciated and they are important and their voice is important. And it means a lot of little interactions. It's not only about instructions and checking if the work flows naturally and the results are exactly that we agreed to. It is about, this, how are you? What do you feel? Do you need some piece of food? Do you want a coffee? You look tired. What do you want? Maybe this is wrong. Maybe it is too much engagement. Maybe it is different roles as a facilitator, as someone who takes care of everyone. But for me, it is the same. And it means that, yes, I love you very much. I appreciate your work. I see you in a week. Love you. Bye-bye. We will continue our work later.
Yeah, and adding on to that piece about the emotional part and being tired, like I've had those moments too after doing like 1 day, 2 days, because I'm really in tune with the emotions of everyone in the room. And like, okay, this person said this. And so how do we open it up to conversation? And facilitation also challenges my biases, right? Just in the sense that how do I make space for the person who disagrees at everything that is said and recognizing that, yes, that it's an okay thing? How do I make space for them? And how do I move this group forward? And just I've had those moments at the end where it's like, "Oh my gosh, I need to rest for the rest of the night," because facilitation is so rewarding. That moment at the end during the debrief when I can just tell like a light bulb clicked in different people's heads, that's rewarding. That also does not mean that it's not tiring. Nonetheless, I will still facilitate day and day and day in and day out because it's what I simply just enjoy doing.
Wonderful. Felix here. I would love to add, for me, it's not about how I feel, but how my facilitation makes the other people feel. Because what Starling was saying, towards the end of the sessions, you can observe in the eyes of the other participants how they feel. And I was once asked, yeah, but how do you measure those results, from those sessions? And I say, I can see them in the eyes of the others. That's how I have come to step away from, okay, I might feel tired after the session, or I might feel buzzed, or I might feel energized. But that's just me, but I'm in service of the group, right? That's why I step in as a facilitator, is to be of service to the other people, the purpose of the session, and then how it makes other people feel. And from that, I get a resonance of all the people's feelings because I'm observant of the group's emotions. And if I see a lot of happiness around me, it makes me happy. If I see a lot of tiredness around people, it also makes me tired. So I'm also in a role of curating the emotions in the room, right? By how I facilitate and how it makes the other people feel. Facilitation is also a lot about stepping out of yourself stepping away from what you think, what you would answer to the question, what you have planned, and really allowing other people to shine and to share and to connect. And that's what makes facilitation valuable to me, is what I can lift other people up to do. That's how I feel about it.
Timothy here. I think something Lily said earlier about how we at times, walk into spaces as facilitators, and you just want to actually facilitate in spaces, in different spaces, So I think for me, I catch myself so many times looking at, other sessions and walking into other meetings or different forums, and noting down how things could have been done better, right? So judging other forms of facilitation, and I don't think it's the best attitude really, but you oftentimes find yourself, I don't know whether it's negative learning, but you constantly just wonder if this would have been done in a different fashion. So I think I really struggle in that regard, just wondering how can I actually help, in those spaces. But I mean, just back to what Starling and I think Felix just shared, I think for me the hardest day is day one, right? And especially when I'm facilitating a different audience, right? They don't know, we've never met, or they don't even know how I facilitate, what are my talents, who Timothy is. And that, when you take the mic or when you call the room into order, when you start, that has always been that nervous moment for me. I just want to agree with you, Felix. You can already see, from their eyes, when you start and everything clicks, right? And you get their energy is high. And you set that, for me, I think I always aim to set the tone on the first day, to give them as much energy as I can. And when I'm able to channel that energy and I can see it in their eyes, right? And I can see those responses, for me, that has always been fulfilling and in so many levels. You can keep going and going and going days on end, right? Because you're feeding off that energy. And I think that for me has always been interesting. It's a conversation that we can always keep on revisiting. And I think for me, I found it in my current setting. We're currently trying to help people understand the difference between moderation and facilitation, right? And most of them are not in my current setting. And I think most of you would agree. At times, people would think moderation and facilitation are both one and the same thing. And so I found myself really trying to, make people understand that those are two different energies and two different skills. So I think this was something that I've seen recently, right, in my current domain.
So first of all, I've heard from many of you, and I deeply agree that facilitators need support, because I think facilitation goes so much beyond the session itself, as some of you were saying as well. We are investing so much from ourselves before the session, long before the session, and then after the session as well. And I think that probably falls under experience management, which can already take away quite a lot from us. And then going into the session and balancing, something that we have helped to create with good intentions, but also not trying to force anything out of the group, but allowing the space to form itself and to surprise us, and also to make sure that our emotions are well prepared for the session. And I think that's not an easy job to do as a facilitator. And I think we all need support. And also I resonated a lot with you guys saying that at the end of the session, there's so much spark in people that can be extremely rewarding and fulfilling and very motivating. And at the same time, what I'm noticing, for example, with clients that I work one-on-one with, is that sometimes they struggle to translate that into their lives. So there's a lot of spark, it's a lot of aha moments. And then sometimes they struggle to translate that into more tangible outcomes. And I once had an engagement where my job was to help managers from a company to apply the leadership trainings that they already received from the company and to apply them to the relationship with their teams. I'm learning at the moment, this is my phase as a facilitator, is I'm learning how to help people to take that spark outside of our session and to take it with them and to try to translate that into something more tangible that stays with them. So thank you all for the inspiration and the connection here.
Maybe that's a good time for me to jump in and thank you all so much for your wise words, your heartfelt words. I think if I hadn't known that you were quote unquote younger facilitators, I would not know that that is the case. Everything that you said is something I'm still dealing with, I'm still grappling with. I told you my age. I probably said it on the podcast before. I'm in my early 50s and I still feel all of the things that you're feeling, even though you might be in your 20s or your 30s, whatever, you've only been facilitating 4 years or 8 years. I mean, in some ways, that's kind of the bad news. But it's the good news as well. You're holding the space for each other now. You'll be holding it 5, 10, 20 years from now. We are still going to be heartfelt facilitators from now into the future. And oh my gosh, there's so many things that we all can learn from everyone who's coming behind us. And you are also modeling for the people coming behind you too. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That's very, very interesting. Thank you.
Grazie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Once again, it was lovely to meet this amazing group of people. I really want to thank Mushumi, Elena, Anna Grace, Timothy, Felix, Andrea, Alessia, Lily, and Starling for sharing their wisdom, sharing the real things behind the facilitator that they feel and have felt as they started this role, are growing in this role, and building their expertise in this role. When I listened back to this episode, I actually took 3 pages of notes of key concepts and words that I heard them say that I'm going to put into a document and put into the show notes for you, because I think even just looking at the concepts that they brought forward, the words that they said, key phrases, I think that can help you spark so many things in your own facilitation practice, no matter what age you are. No matter where you are in the journey of becoming or being a facilitator, if you've just started out, if you've been doing this for 30 years, this group, although younger and maybe having only done this work for 3 years or 8 years or 5 years or whatever it was, I hope you saw and heard that this is a very special group. And I don't know if they're unique, because I think every person that chooses to become a facilitator is probably truly a special person. I'm so glad that they talked about the challenges of being a facilitator and learning in this role, how vulnerable it can be, how we struggle as we learn how to do this. And I think it was Mushumi maybe that talked about that topsy-turvy feeling as you realize, oh my goodness, I thought I was doing such a great job lecturing or training and kind of dumping information at people. And then you realize, oh, there's a thing called facilitation, and that's a different approach. And boy, does that rock our world. The topsy-turvy feeling of, okay, I thought I was really doing a great job. I probably was in some respects, but then now I realize there is a better way. There is a more effective way for our groups to show up in the events. And I'm so glad that the folks talked about this. I love how they were being really honest and vulnerable, saying that they had to learn how to drop the professional mask to show up as more humble and more vulnerable and more real and authentic in the room with their groups. I also loved when they shared their excitement when things worked and they realized the difference that they can make with groups, either in the moment or in the days following. That was so exciting to hear their excitement, and I hope you're still feeling that excitement about your work wherever you are. Facilitation, as this group has said, can be chaotic. It can be noisy. It can cause us to shed tears, to struggle. but we unlock things for ourselves, as the group said, when we can find spaces and communities of peers in the field where we can be held, where we can share and learn with each other. And even just in conversations like this, it was nice to hear them saying to each other, oh, wow, thank you for saying this. What you're saying is resonating with me in my experience, and so appreciative of each other around the things that they shared. I could go on and on. I won't do that because I think the episode really does stand for itself. I don't need to rehash all the things that they said that were wonderful, but I will put my keyword recap document in the show notes for you in case it sparks any of your thinking in the days and weeks going forward. Thank you again to Bryan Guzmán and the rest of the Future Now community, and particularly these guests, for coming and sharing with us all today. Coming up on the podcast, I have a conversation with Eric Wong. Eric is the founder of Algorithm Alchemists, a student-led nonprofit that teaches coding and computational thinking to elementary and high school students through interactive online classes. Eric is currently in grade 12, so I'm excited to bring to you another conversation with a younger facilitator. And in this episode, I've actually asked my brother to come along. Kevin Cougler is the founder and executive director of STEM Camp and Camp STEAM Canada, located in Ontario, Canada. Because Kevin's organization is in the STEM area, just like Eric's is, I thought it might be fun to have the three of us in conversation. So join Eric and Kevin and I next time to talk about teaching coding to kids. I hope you join us then. Thank you so much for listening. You can find the show notes for every episode at facilitatingonpurpose.ca. Feel free to reach out to me if anything resonates for you with any episode, or if you have a guest you'd like to suggest to me to chat with for a future episode. Thanks so much, as always, to my audio editor, Mary Chan, for her fantastic support on this and every episode. I'll see you next time.